My name is Vikas Agarwal. I'm the founder of AIF and PMS Experts India. I think a lot of people are confused about AIF, PMS experts and advisors. So they keep asking me, is this an advisory or a distribution? So let me just clarify, this is a distribution house. We bring in a lot of data points in terms of providing the best quality portfolio managers from all across India. So today is a very special day because we have with us Mr. Saurav Mukherjee with us. Well, it took me a long time to get him on the show of Ask the Expert, but I'm glad that he is here today, finally. So I don't think Saurav Mukherjee needs any kind of introduction. In fact, his presence in the media clearly indicates that he's been able to influence the minds of investors. So millions of investors are able to follow, and I'm one of his followers. In terms of whatever his thought process is. I would say the best way to introduce him is that, he's the author of Coffee Can Investing. So I think there would be no other way best way to sort of introduce him. So welcome on the show, Saurav, formally.
Thank you very much for inviting Tej and me.
All right. So welcome Tej as well. Thank you for joining in. So today, so sort of the format of the show is basically we keep organizing these sort of knowledge-based sessions for our investors. And in between, we'll be shooting a couple of questions as well. So the format of the show is to really understand more from you. So we invite domain experts like you, and we keep asking questions on our investors' behalf. We also make a small announcement that in case they have any question, they can type in their question in Q&A box. So that we can keep asking. To begin with, the topic of today's session is there is a sector which is called BFSI, and this keeps surprising. So every time it is said that every time when the bull run begins or a new journey begins, sector would change. But what I can see is over a period of almost 10-15 years, and both in India and globally, and Saurav would be the right person to share his perspective, is that banking and financial sector per se has been very consistent and have been the key contributor any market that you pick up, both domestically and internationally. So we'll understand more about that. But before that, the first question which comes to everybody's mind, Saurav, is that market has reached all-time high. So is this the good time to enter into? So over to you, Saurav.
See, the market is never a source of concern, right? As you know, Vikas, as you must have heard us say hundreds of times, right? The core of the Indian stock market is a hoax. It's a forgery, right? Which value nahi hai, dam nahi hai. And all you have to do is look at the most prominent companies in our country, whether they are banks, NBFCs, or they are non-banks. The accounts don't stack up. So 80% of the Indian stock market, the company generates no free cash flow. What is free cash flow? Free cash flow is the excess that the company generates in excess of its cost of capital. So return on capital minus cost of capital, that is the surplus, that is the excess that the company generates. We call this free cash flow. 80% of the Indian companies generate no free cash flow. As a result, they have nothing with which to grow their business. So whether you take the Nifty over the last 1 year, 3 year, 5 years and 10 years, or take the BSE 500 for that matter, earnings growth is close to zero. Countries growing at 6-7% real terms, but 80% of companies are largely hoax operations. There is no cash flow. The annual report is sort of dressed up and put there, and therefore one should never lose too much sleep about the stock market. And the Indian stock market effectively is controlled by 30 companies. 30 companies account for 90-95% of the profits in the Indian stock market, right? And these are basically monopolistic companies. We'll discuss the monopolies in financial services today. But in that book you held up, thank you very much for holding it up, very kind of you. The book you held up, which forms the core of Marcellus's CCP approach, what we've explained there is what your other attendees on this webinar are trying to do is look for companies.
There are a few new attendees as well, yeah.
Right. So what I, and the various attendees on this call are trying to do, we're not bothered. None of us, hopefully, on this call is bothered. I hope nobody on this webinar has joined in saying Nifty kahan jayega, Sensex mein kaise nivesh karu, right? That sort of nonsense is not really the purpose of this discourse. The discourse has threefold purpose. One is, how do we identify which promoter is stealing money in our country? Right? Because that's the core of the stock market. As 80% promoters are doing naughty things with their own money or their banks' money or shareholders' money. And our job is to figure out how to identify them. Tej specializes in forensic analysis of banks, NBFCs, asset managers, life insurers. We have other colleagues in Marcellus who specialize in forensic analysis of FMCG companies, auto companies, and so on. So first job of any fund manager, of everybody on this webinar, should be, how do we identify who are the people stealing money in our country? Because those companies we don't want to invest with. If we invest with them, our money will end up in Dubai, in Swiss banks, and so on, right? Second job is, amongst the handful of companies that are clean, if you ask us, we would say out of the BSE 500, you barely have 50 clean companies. Out of those 50 clean companies, 70 clean companies, BSE 500, you have around 70 clean companies. How do we know amongst them which companies are selling products, services that everybody on this Zoom call will say, I can't live without this product or service, right? So we're talking about, say, in the context of financial services, there'll be motor insurance, it'll be pensions, it'll be SME working capital finance. In the context of non-financial services, the sorts of stocks which are in that book would be baby milk powder, Nestle, paints, Asian Paints, adhesives, Pidilite, right? These are the stocks in that book you kindly held up. So first job, identify the chores, get them out. Second job, identify companies selling products and services which are essential for every single one of the citizens in our country. And the third job of every investor is to identify companies who are monopolists, right? Because if you don't invest in a monopolist, Vikas, if you don't invest with a monopolist, poor fellow will not make any money, right? At Peter Thiel, the 021 guy, the man who created PayPal, who's created Palantir, who's Elon Musk's guru. As Peter Thiel says in 021, there's a lovely book and a webinar around it, 99.9% of companies are failures the world over, not just India, US maybe, because they fail to beat competition, right? The local panwala, the local restaurant, the local kirana store, 99% of listed entities, they're not able to beat competition. If you can't beat competition, if I can't beat competition, we're not going to generate a return on capital above cost of capital. And the only way a company can beat the cost of capital, the only way the company can generate a surplus is to build a monopoly, to do something that the competition cannot. And our job in Marcellus is to look for companies who are clean, who sell essential products and services, and who are dominant monopolies. So the fund that Tej runs, Kings of Capital, does this in the context of financial services. Elsewhere in Marcellus, our colleague Ashwin Shetty does this in the context of small caps. The fund is called Little Champs. Unfortunately, we can't take any more money there. The fund is full up. And elsewhere in Marcellus, our colleague Rakshit Ranjan does exactly what you showed in that lovely book, which is he looks for large companies across sectors who are clean, selling essential products and services with very high barriers to entry. That is what an investor is there to do. An investor is not there to say market kahan ja rahi hai, kahan pe hai, Nifty kya karega, what is the next RBI announcement, what will happen in the budget, who will win the India, Australia, Sydney test match. That's none of my business, not Tej, nor yours, and shouldn't be the business of anybody on this call. Right? That is the job of people who are having chai, doing satta downstairs. You and I are not interested in that racket. We are interested in this troika of priorities. So the book that you showed us and our core funds do this across sectors. We figured out around a couple of years ago that financial services is very interesting. Why is financial services so interesting? It's the only sector in India which hasn't yet been monopolized. If you think about it, Vikas, Baki sab kuch to India monopolized hai, right? Whether it is, if you look at cooking oil, 2 families control 90% of the profits. You take hair oil, 2 families control 90%. You take biscuits, 2 families control 85% of the profits. You take paint, 2 companies control 85%. You take cars, trucks, truck tires, car tires, air compressors, glass line vessels, adhesives, cigarette, cooking oil, right? Hamara country, top to bottom, is monopolized. 1 or 2 families will monopolize every sector and they'll take home 80-90% of the profits. But the only sector where this rule doesn't hold true is the largest sector in the Indian economy, financial services. 25% of our country's economy is financial services. 35% of the stock market is financial services. So why isn't financial services monopolized in our country? right? We'll try to give you the answers over the course of the next 25 minutes. And the second thing, Vikas, is we'll also try to tell you guys why do we think in the next 3, 5, and 10 years financial services will be monopolized. Monopoly banegi yahan pe, banks mein monopoly banegi, actually half ban chuki hai. NBFCs mein monopoly banegi. I hope because your listeners don't mind my talking in Hindi, no? So
No,
is
no,
that all right?
mixed of English and Hindi both.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So part one, we'll try to explain to you why is financial services not monopolized. See, rest of the world, you take China, you take USA, you take Europe, हर पहलू financial services का, every aspect of financial services is monopolized in the Western world. You'll have 2-3 large banks, you'll have 2-3 large insurers, you'll have 2-3 large asset managers. Our country is different in that regard. We've got 35 prominent banks. We have literally 10,000 NBFCs. We have 15, 20 prominent insurance companies. We have 35 mutual funds, right? Why do we have so many companies, A, in financial services? And B, why is Marcellus so confident कि अगले 5 साल में यहाँ पे monopoly बनेगी? And as that monopolization process plays out, kings of capital, the equivalent of CCP, but in financial services, as that monopoly process plays out, kings of capital will seek to profit from the monopolization, from the consolidation of the banking sector, the NBFC sector, the asset management sector, and the insurance sector. So if it's all right, we'll request Tej to take us through the logic behind this whole monopolization.
Sure.
And then we can do some Q&A, hopefully with your attendees.
Yeah. So,
can they participate in this?
Yeah, they can participate. So I'll make again a small announcement because I can see a lot of people have joined of it. So in case they have any queries or questions, they can type in their questions in Q&A box. And then I'll be asking and shooting these questions to Saurabh and Tej on their behalf. Or anybody wants to speak, then just raise your hand and I'll kind of open up. So over to you, Tej.
Yeah, sure. Could you, Vikas, allow me to share my screen, please?
Sure. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why we are doing a financial focused fund, especially during a crisis? So what we've seen historically, every time there is a crisis, whether it's crisis of the late 90s, early 2000s, or whether it's the global financial crisis during 2008-9, the high quality lenders tend to gain market share post a crisis. So what happens during a crisis is what we saw over the past 6 months, 9 months. So if you look at the table at the bottom left of the screen, we've taken 2 examples. HDFC Limited during the crisis of the late 90s. This was a crisis where about 70% of NBFCs got destroyed during those 2-3 years. And what we saw was even for HDFC Limited, which was among the most well-run NBFCs, most well-run housing finance company of that time, we saw that NPAs doubled even for HDFC Limited. So FY 97, if you can see, 0.5% NPAs going up to 1% in 99, 2000. So NPAs doubled. Along with that, the P ratio also halved. P ratio halved from about 20 times to 8-9 times. So there is a double impact on the stock price even for the most well-run lenders during a financial crisis, because your NPAs increase, your P ratio halves. However, what we saw post the crisis was pretty interesting. We saw that ROEs of HDFC Limited increased to their highest level ever. The ROEs were 24-25%. These sort of ROEs HDFC Limited had never achieved in their history. Along with that, the loan book growth was 25-30%. Again, loan book growth was higher than what they saw in the pre-crisis era. And as a result of this, as loan book growth normalizes, ROEs improved, the PE ratio also normalizes. So investing in high quality financial stocks during a crisis gives you multiple benefits. Similarly, HDFC Bank during the 2008-9 global financial crisis, same story. NPAs increased during the crisis. NPAs increased from 1.5% to 2%. Along with that, the P ratios came down from about 29-30 times to 18-19 times. However, post the crisis, HDFC Bank again started growing at 25-30%, and NPAs actually improved. And NPAs were at the lowest level, better than the pre-crisis era at 1%. And as NPAs normalized, growth normalized, we saw that the PE ratio also started normalizing. And the reason that this happens is because these high quality lenders have, in the context of the NBFC space, we see that the likes of Bajaj Finance are able to raise capital at 4.5 to 5%. Even during the crisis, they were raising money at 4.5 to 5% with ease. Similarly, in the case of high quality banks, while many banks we saw were struggling to raise deposits during the COVID crisis, we've seen that HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, they were raising deposits. Their deposit base is growing at 20-25% even during the past 6-9 months. So this is a very important aspect, that these high quality lenders have access to funding, access to liquidity. They are well capitalized. The second point being that because they maintained discipline even during the pre-crisis era, the increase in NPAs for high quality lenders is not proportional to the increase in NPAs for the whole industry. So we'll see that for the industry, while NPAs might increase 1.5-2 times, the increase in NPAs for a HDFC Bank or a Kotak Bank will not be proportionate to what the rest of the lenders will see. And the third point being, post the crisis, as we see that competition fades away because they do not have either enough funding, they're struggling with their NPA issues on the balance sheet, they do not have access to liquidity. We see that the likes of Bajaj Finance, HDFC Bank will be able to pick and choose the borrowers of their quality. So they'll be able to charge the interest rates that they would want to charge. The net interest margins will expand. As a result, asset quality will also be better. And therefore, their returns on equity improve post a crisis. So post a crisis, high quality lenders gain market share. Therefore, growth improves. Second, their asset quality, names, ROEs improve. And third, because of that, the P ratios also start normalizing over a period of time. And that is why we launched Kings of Capital, because we believe that during COVID, as we see other lenders will struggle with liquidity, asset quality issues, etc., the likes of HDFC Bank, Kotak, Bajaj Finance will gain market share. So our investment process for Kings of Capital is pretty similar to what we follow in CCP and Little Champs. We start off with a universe of 95 stocks because this is a financial services focused fund. These 95 stocks will be from the universe of banks, NBFCs, insurers, brokers, and asset managers. On these 95 stocks, we run our forensic filter. So we try and weed out companies with poor quality accounting, poor standards of governance, and a third of our universe gets eliminated at the first stage itself. So we are left with 65 companies. We run our capital allocation filter on these 65 companies. So we try and figure out which of these 65 companies have consistently generated return on equity well above cost of equity. Again, about 35 to 40 companies get eliminated at this stage. So we're finally left with 23-24 companies which have high accounting quality, which have sustainably generated return on equity well above cost of equity. And then comes the final part where the research team spends most of its time, and we try and assess whether these companies have high barriers to entry, sustainable competitive advantages or not. And the way we try and do that is we speak to management teams. We, of course, speak to the existing management team, and we speak to members who've been previously on the board of these companies. But we do a lot of channel checks as well. So, for example, in the case of banks and NBFCs, we'll speak to branch managers, credit officers, collection agents, DSAs, etc. In the case of insurance companies, we'll speak to actuaries, we go and speak to brokers, insurance agents, etc. And that is how we've created a portfolio of 12 stocks to start off with. It's a 12 stock portfolio in Kings of Capital. It will be a 10 to 14 stock portfolio of financial companies. The way that...
just one question
Sure.
to clarify. So these 10 to 14 companies that you're talking about is irrespective of the market caps, right?
That's right. That's right. So the smallest stock will have a market cap of about $500 million. Around a 3,000 to 4,000 crore market cap, while the largest stock, something like a HDFC Bank, will have a $100 billion market cap. The median market cap is about 60,000 crores for this portfolio.
And one more thing, you mentioned 95 financial stocks. So is this the total number that you're talking about, or 95 is as per your filtering list amongst these 4 sectors that you are mentioning, and then you are filtering it down further?
Yeah, so we've taken all stocks above 1,000 crore market cap, which are in financial services.
Understood. Please go ahead.
So to highlight our forensic accounting model, because this is pretty important in financial services, to eliminate companies which are poor quality accounting is a very important aspect in stock selection across all portfolios, but it is even more important in financial services. So we've developed about 11 accounting ratios specifically for financial stocks. And we apply these 11 ratios as the first filter to eliminate companies from our universe. So for example, we have one of the ratios as fee income as a percentage of net interest income. So for example, this ratio in the case of Yes Bank was twice as high as Kotak Bank or most other banks in our country. So most banks have this ratio between 25 to 30%. However, for Yes Bank, it was twice as high as that number. Similarly, contingent liability as a percentage of net worth is another ratio that we use. That ratio again for Yes Bank was at around 23 times versus 4 times for Kotak. And using 11 such ratios, we categorize or rank all of these financial companies from a D1 to D10. So D10 being the worst score, D10 stands for the 10th decile, and D1 being the best score. And what we found out was, we also correlated our ranking from D1 to D10 with share price returns. So what we tried to find out was whether is it the case that the companies which have really high quality accounting, do they really outperform on a share price return, stock return basis or not? So what we found out was that over the past 4-5 years, companies in the zone of quality, that is companies in D1, D2, D3, they delivered a 10% CAGR. And this is without any manual intervention, without any stock selection, simply by picking companies which have high quality accounting, which are in the zone of quality. We saw that there is a huge difference between companies in the zone of quality and zone of thuggery. While companies in the zone of thuggery delivered minus 25% CAGR. So there is a massive 35% difference, and this is on a CAGR basis, between companies which have high quality accounting, which are in the zone of quality, and companies which are in the zone of thuggery, which is companies in the D8 to D10 deciles. So this is our first step, that is eliminate companies which have poor quality accounting. Now the way the portfolio is constructed is that we'll have about 60-65% of our portfolio in lending companies, that is banks and NBFCs. About 30 to 35% of our portfolio will be invested in non-lenders. The non-lenders being life insurance, general insurance, broking, asset management, wealth management, etc. And what that does is the lenders are a leverage play. So they are leveraged anywhere between 5 times to 10 times in most cases. And therefore, they also have a growth rate which is between say 20 to 30%. But they are a bit more volatile. While the non-lenders, the likes of asset management and broking businesses, have no leverage. They generate 50 to 60% ROE without leverage. Life and general insurance have a lower leverage. Their leverage may be 2 or 3 times. And therefore, these businesses, the non-lending part of the portfolio, while gunning out between 15 to 18% returns, they have a much lower volatility. They provide a lot of stability to the portfolio. So even if we were to take the example of the COVID crisis, we've seen that the awareness for life insurance, health insurance products increased. Therefore, life insurance, health insurance was growing at 20% plus throughout the past 6-9 months. So while lenders were having challenges on NPA, collection, etc., the non-lending part of the portfolio is pretty much insulated from what was happening in the larger economy. So for example, brokerages were also growing at 70-80% YOY during the past 6-9 months. General insurance, 50% of their business comes from motor insurance. So obviously during the lockdown, they did not see motor insurance claims coming through. They reported their highest ever ROE, highest ever profitability margins during the past 6-9 months. And therefore, this is a part of the portfolio which will keep on generating 15 to 20% return with lower volatility, while the lending part of the portfolio will generate a higher growth, higher earnings growth, and therefore higher stock price growth with a bit of a higher volatility. And what we did was we did a back test on our portfolio. So assuming that someone would have invested in this portfolio on 1st April 2018, because we have seen multiple challenges in the financial sector over the past 2.5 years, we thought that this is a good time to test our portfolio over the past 2.5 years, because it's seen IL&FS crisis, it's seen COVID, it's seen Yes Bank fail, it's seen DHFL fail during this 2.5 years. And we saw that portfolio since 1st April 2018 generated 19% CAGR returns, with the lenders delivering 21%, the non-lenders delivering 15%, and therefore on a blended basis, the portfolio delivering 19%. Versus the bank Nifty delivering 10% and the Nifty delivering 8%. So, and this is with a volatility which is actually lower than the Nifty for the portfolio, despite it being a portfolio focused on financial services. The volatility throughout this period has been lower than the Nifty volatility. And the reason behind this is the table on the bottom left of the screen. Because of our focus on consistent earnings growth, consistent return on equity generation, even during the past 5 years, throughout these challenges that the financial sector has seen, the portfolio has grown earnings at 19%, with return on equity also at 19%. And when we compare this to the Nifty or the bank Nifty, the numbers for these two indices have been pretty dismal. 7% earnings growth for the bank Nifty, just 1% for the Nifty, and return on equity numbers also, which are much lower. So we believe that if during a period of 5 years, when we saw GST, demonetization, COVID, Yes Bank, IL&FS, the portfolio can run out 19-20% earnings growth. During the next 3 to 5 years, when we'll see consolidation and financialization of savings, the 19 to 20% sort of growth is quite possible, and that is where we'll get most of our share price returns also. We believe that share price returns will mimic the earnings growth number. I'll just give one example of a stock we own. And the reason that we own that stock. So Bajaj Finance is a case study that I'll go through quickly. The three aspects that we look at, which I discussed, and that's our investment process and the filter that we run, is one, high quality accounting. Second, consistent return on equity higher than cost of equity. And the third being high barriers to entry. So obviously the first two aspects, Bajaj Finance clears our filter. The third aspect on barriers to entry is unique to each stock in our portfolio. And the barrier to entry for Bajaj Finance is around technology and big data. So in the case of Bajaj Finance in 2008-9, when Rajiv Jain joined as the MD CEO, he inherited a 2,500 crore rupee loan book, which was mainly doing vehicle financing for the Bajaj Group. So what they thought about was they wanted to look at large profit pools where Bajaj Finance could consistently grow at 25-30%. And generate return on equity of 25 to 30%. And that is how they narrowed down on the consumer durable financing business. Today, 10-12 years hence, it's about a 1.5 lakh crore rupee loan book, which has grown from a 2,500 crore rupee loan book. And they have about a 70% market share in consumer durable financing. So they finance 70% of all consumer durables financed in India today. And the way that this part of the business works is the customer acquisition channel is a consumer durable financing business. They acquire all their customers through this business, and then that customer is cross-sold multiple other products. So once he becomes a customer of Bajaj Finance through this acquisition channel, he is cross-sold personal loans, digital loans, home loans, professional loan, unsecured SME loans, etc., etc. And therefore, the cost of customer acquisition for Bajaj Finance is the best in the industry. And secondly, very importantly, because they have a lot of data already on this customer, the NPAs for Bajaj Finance is also the lowest in the industry. Because they are able to self-select customers, they are able to select customers on whom they have a lot of data, a lot of historical repayment data. They'll be lending to only those customers who have consistently repaid their loans over a long period of time. And to take one example of one of the subsegments that they focused on is healthcare financing, giving out loans to doctors. So there are about 10 lakh doctors in India. And what Bajaj Finance figured out 5 years ago was that if they want to do SME financing in India, they have to figure out a subsector which is very resilient, because SMEs otherwise are the most impacted part of the economy whenever anything goes wrong in the macroeconomic landscape of India. Whether it's demonetization, whether it's COVID, the SME segment is the worst impacted. So they started focusing on lending to doctors, lending to healthcare workers. And the way that they built out this segment was they've mapped out the data on each of these 10 lakh doctors in India, and they've divided them into 600 subsegments. And the way they've done that is they know whether the doctor is practicing out of rural India or is he practicing out of Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, Chennai, etc. They know whether the doctor has graduated from a top 20 medical college or has he graduated from some local medical school. Which part of India does he practice out of? What is his specialization? Is he an oncologist or is he a surgeon or is he a general practitioner? What other bank does he have a relationship with? Does he bank with a HDFC bank or does he bank with a Dhanlaxmi bank? After compiling all of this data and backtesting this data for 5, 7, 8, 9 years, they have subsegmented these 10 lakh doctors into 600 clusters. And basis which cluster does the doctor lie in, he will be, first of all, the basic criteria will be, should they give out a loan to that doctor or not? And then the next level will be at what rate of interest, how much should they give him? Is it 50-60% of what he's asked for, or should they give him the full loan amount, etc., etc. And this data keeps on improving month after month, quarter after quarter, because they keep on getting more and more data on that same doctor. And that is how they've built out each and every part of their asset side. And when we combine this sort of competitive advantage on the asset side with their ability to raise liabilities at 4.5-5% on the liability side, it becomes a very powerful barrier to entry. So no other NBFC can enter into this market because they are one of the 2 or 3 NBFCs which are able to raise liabilities at 4.5-5%. And no other fintech player can mimic what they are doing because the fintech player might have the technology or the data analytics capabilities, but they'll not have the ability to raise money at 4.5-5%. So that is how we've identified stocks in our portfolio, and we have 12 such stocks in our portfolio, 60-65% lending businesses, 30-35% non-lending businesses. So we're just happy to take any questions.
Yeah.
So Vikas, before we go into that, do you want me to just elaborate on why we launched this portfolio halfway through the? So basically, we turned. Tej had been doing this work on figuring out the best financial services stocks to invest in. Obviously, in our consistent compounders portfolio, we have financial services stocks, right? And Little Champs also, we have financial services stocks. So the work had been continuing, and we knew who the good lenders, asset managers were. When COVID hit the country, right, we figured out by late March that the conditions were now ripe for monopolizing the sector, right? Three reasons why, with a high degree of confidence, we believe we can say that the sector will monopolize. So let's start with the banking sector. 65% of bank loans outstanding in India are from PSU banks, public sector banks, right? As I'm sure everybody on this call knows, public sector banks don't make any money. Effectively, they don't make money. The return on equity of State Bank of India, the best of the PSUs, the State Bank of India, the return of equity of State Bank of India has been below their cost of equity for the last 20 years. So the way the public sector banking sector functions is, Vikas Agarwal files his income tax return at the end of the year, pays taxes to the government of India. The government takes Vikas's money effectively and gives it to State Bank of India, right? So Vikas's income taxes go to fund State Bank of India's balance sheet because State Bank of India is unable ever to generate a return on equity above cost of equity. Right now, when COVID hit in March, we figured out that this game is over. This game of the government taxing the people on the Zoom call and cross-subsidizing effectively the PSU banks, that game is over. The government will need, just to keep the PSU banks' market share at 65%, the government will need to take out of our pockets the best part of $25 billion, which is 1% of GDP. Nahi hone wala. The government doesn't have the money. So let's assume that the PSU banks will gradually lose market share. Air India style, the PSU banks gradually sag over the next 20 years. So through some miracle, assume that today their market share is 65%. Through some miracle, assume Bhagwan is with them, and 10 years out, PSU banks' market share is 50%. That means they lose 15% share in 10 years, right? Who will get that share? Will it be some, broken balance sheet private sector bank? Don't think so. Will it be HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank? High probability, right? Well-run banks, strong balance sheets, plenty of capital, high quality management. So what's the impact? Why do we care whether HDFC or Kotak gets it? Let's do some quick maths on, say, Kotak Bank. It was created in 2004. In 16 years, Kotak Bank has given 180x returns, but their market share in Indian banking is only 3%. If this 3 goes to 5, Vikas, that's all we need. 3 to go to 5 over 10 years. Kotak's 3% market share goes to 5% over 10 years. Pretty much everybody on the Zoom call will comfortably compound at 20% over the next 10 years with Kotak Bank as they pull a little bit of market. There's 2% market share from the PSU banks, right? Similar set of maths with, say, HDFC Bank. So that's the first leg of the thesis. Government doesn't have the money, won't have the money to save the PSU banks. Assume they slowly go down, right? You and I will make 20% comfortably on the PSU, on the private sector banks Tej has invested in. Secondly, let's go to the NBFC sector. 10,000 NBFCs in our country. Tej, do you mind putting up that forensic accounting wala where we show the stratification, how many, right? So our forensic work, the work that Tej and his team have done, that suggests to us that our NBFC industry, around 70-80% of these are fraudsters, basically. These are companies who chapo fake numbers, right? So if you look at that chart on the bottom left wala chart, the zone of opacity plus the zone of thuggery makes up 70-80% of the NBFC sector, which means that 7,000, 8,000 NBFCs do naughty things. They do naughty things every year to get by. Now, what naughty things do NBFCs historically have they done? First is obviously they give laddus to the auditor. Second is they give dal kachori to the credit rating agency and get AA, AAA rating. And thirdly, they give Toblerone chocolates they give Swiss chocolates to the debt mutual fund manager so that he takes the retail investors' money and puts it in the NBFC's balance sheet, right? So triple play hai. All elements of this triple play have been attacked in the last 1.5 years by different arms of the Indian state. So a year ago, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs set up an audit watchdog. So for the first time, the chartered accountancy sector, the audit sector, is now governed, regulated by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs ka watchdog. Barakhamba Road, Delhi mein baithta hai. And if you're a CA or an auditor on this call, I'm sure you would have already received communication from the audit watchdog. They are asking for various types of information. So for the first time, auditors have a degree of fear running through their blood. I mean, I'm sure you would have read in the newspapers fairly blunt warnings from the government to the audit community. Second is last year, barring one relatively clean credit rating agency, the rest of the credit rating agencies CEOs were told to go home and not come back to work. Right? They were told, "Maaf karo aur nahi chahiye aapka services." The credit rating agencies, therefore, for the first time, have some check and balance to their wretched system of doling out AAAs and AAs. And thirdly, last year, SEBI changed the rules for debt mutual funds. So till a year ago, debt mutual funds could put 50% of their corpus in NBFC's paper, NBFC's issued bonds, basically. Last year, SEBI said ceiling of 25%. 25% is zyada you cannot put in the NBFC's paper. First time, cap mar diya. Just full disclosure, I sit on the relevant SEBI committee which made this change. The totality of this means that these 80% of NBFCs who are naughty NBFCs, Gunda NBFCs, they have lost access to funding. The result of that is that the clean, well-run NBFCs are getting all the money. The result of that is that Bajaj Finance, for the first time in my career, is not only getting money at 4.5%, wo to mil hi raha hai. For the first time in my career, I'm seeing the gap, the funding cost gap between Bajaj Finance and its rivals has opened up to 2.5%. Right? Unbelievable. Right? Even their well-run rivals, Bajaj Finance ka strongest rivals, are borrowing money 2.5% more expensive than Bajaj Finance. Right? For the first time in my life, when I'm visiting electrical stores in Maharashtra, they are saying, barring Bajaj Finance, koi aur market mein hai hi nahi washing machine, fridge ka financing karne. So second consolidation dynamic, second monopolization dynamic that Tej's portfolio will make money from is the monopolization of the NBFC sector, which has 10,000 players, of which 100 are sizable. Most of these guys will get blasted away in the next 3, 4, 5 years, and you'll monopolize the NBFC sector in the hands of a handful of lenders, and Marcellus has tried to cherry pick those handful of lenders and make money from this dynamic. Third dimension of monopolization that is upon us is this discourse. the discourseless all of us on this Zoom call are having. What are we doing here? You folks have worked hard for your money. You're trying to figure out how to deploy it in financial assets rather than buying a flat or a bar of gold, right? Now, this is a massive dynamic which the RBI has articulated in some detail. The RBI has said repeatedly over the last 3 years that 95% of India's household wealth is in physical assets. A mere 5% is in financial assets. The RBI has further said that this sort of skew is without precedent with anywhere else in the world. No other large economy has itna skewed, itna physical assets, right? And furthermore, the RBI said this skew is not sustainable. Financial assets ka ratio 5 se badega, right? Now, how much will 5 go up? Will it go to 40? Will it go to 20? Right? If you look at other countries at our stage of development, financial assets typically are 15 to 20%, right? If you look at India, we're pathetic. I mean, our total household assets are 10 trillion, of which 5% is financial. That means our total financial assets in the entire country 70 years after independence is a mere $500 billion. Jeff Bezos alone has more than $500 billion of financial assets, right? So with every exigency, whether it is demon or COVID, families like our social circle, your social circle is realizing that flat खरीद के कुछ नहीं मिलने वाला. ना तो capital appreciation होता है, ना तो cash flow मिलता है, ना ही yield मिलता है, और ना ही liquidity मिलता है. So as gradually high net worth families move into financial assets, this ratio should move up gradually. So assume it goes up 1% a year. So 5% say next year 6, year after that 7, year after that 8, and 10 years out we're at 15%, which means 1.5 to $2 trillion in financial assets. Who will benefit from this? How can you and I make money from this? The first obvious layer of financialization that we are seeing as 1% of 10 trillion, which is 100 billion, as every year 1% of 10 trillion, $100 billion hits the financial system. The first obvious layer we are seeing is uptake of life insurance, and soon I think we'll see pensions. It's a very visceral thing. What if I die? If I'm not there, what will my family do, right? So what Tej has done is he's bought the best insurer in the country, cleanest numbers, strongest barriers to entry, most sensible capital allocation, and we will invest it nicely in the best life insurer in the country. The second fear, what happens if I fall ill? What happens if my car gets smashed on the road? So health insurance and motor insurance, natural need, COVID ke baad to even more so, right? So we bought the best general insurer in the country, strongest barriers to entry, best analytics, best return ratios, clean, well-run general insurer we have in our portfolio. Third layer, what we are doing here, asset management. Unfortunately or fortunately, Marcellus is not listed. So we bought the strongest listed asset manager in the portfolio. And the final layer of what we are doing, wealth management and broking. We have bought the strongest listed wealth manager and broker. It's a subsidiary of a bank. I hope none of you are going to go and sort of use a broker who's not a subsidiary of a bank, given everything that's happened with Karvi. Hopefully better sense will prevail on this call, and everybody on this call will use brokers who are well regulated, RBI subsidiaries, RBI regulated entities ke subsidiaries with strong technology platforms. So we have bought one of those. So as Tej explained, 60% of the kings of capital is lending plays, banks and NBFCs. We're playing the strongest banks, the strongest NBFCs, lenders like Bajaj. Then we are playing the best insurers, both life and non-life. We're playing the best asset manager and the best broker. And in effect, over the next 5 to 10 years, as our financial services sector, the largest sector of the Indian economy, as that monopolizes into the hands of, say, a dozen odd companies, we're trying to make money from those dozen odd clean, well-run shops. Yep, so stop yapping there. We'll hand it over back to you for moderating the Q&A. You ask us, and Tej and I will divide the questions.
There are a couple of questions for Tej. So the first question comes from Mr. Anil. He's asking that, don't you think price to book is more relevant valuation metrics than price to earning in case of financials?
Yeah. So I'll take the question on valuation as a whole. So what we believe is that 90-95% of stock price returns are driven by earnings growth. And as long as you have earnings growth in the vicinity of 20-25%, it does not matter what the change in P multiple or price to book multiple or whatever the valuation metric that we're using, say price to embedded value in the case of insurance companies, whatever we use becomes redundant. The reason behind that is let's take an example. If Bajaj Finance is growing its earnings at 35%, 30%, which it has over the past 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, even if we were to enter at 50 times P multiple, okay, for Bajaj Finance, or 8 times price to book multiple for Bajaj Finance, and it continues to grow at 35% over a 5-year period, even if that 50 times P multiple comes down to 25 times, even then you'll end up making a 25% CAGR on Bajaj Finance. Even if the P multiple halves, you end up making a 25% CAGR because the earnings compounding is so fast, is so high that it offsets the derating in the P multiple. Similarly, for the price to book multiple, even if you were to enter Bajaj Finance at 8 times and you exit it at 4 times, 5 times, 3 times, it does not matter because you'll still end up making 25% earnings CAGR because your book value or your PAT would have grown at 25%, 30%, 35%. So that's plus 35 or plus 30 versus minus 5 or minus 10% for the derating in the PE multiple or the derating in the price to book multiple. So plus 35% for the growth in book value or earnings, minus 5 or minus 10% for the derating in the PE multiple or the price to book multiple, it still gives you the plus 25% number. Versus if you enter into a stock which gives you 5%, 7%, 10% earnings growth or book value compounding, then whatever P multiple or price to book multiple you enter at, that is the only factor that will matter. Because if you are growing at 10% and the P multiple derates by even 20, 30%, you'll end up making no more than what you make in a FD, that's 6, 7%. So at 10% or 5% sort of earnings compounding or book value compounding, a stock which is valued at even 10 times earnings or 1 time price to book, even that stock is expensive at that valuation. So as long as, what we focus is on earnings growth. As long as your earnings growth is consistent and you have high barriers to entry, you'll be able to sustain that earnings growth. The price to book multiple or P multiple, whichever way you look at it, becomes redundant.
The second question again with regards to your forensic filters. He's asking that do you consider fairness of management compensation and its charges?
Yeah. So in these 11 ratios, we've highlighted 5 ratios on this slide. Apart from this, there are 6, 7 other ratios. These are all quantitative metrics which can be compared across these financial companies. Apart from these quantitative metrics, we also have other qualitative aspects which we get from the annual report, which will include something like fairness of compensation to management, which will include related party transactions, which will include the quality of auditors, whether the auditors have been changed repeatedly in the past 5 or 7 years. Things like that will get covered in our qualitative aspects. And once a company clears the first filter, which is our forensic score, which are these quantitative metrics for analyzing whether a company is following accounting practices or not, it goes through our second filter, which is capital allocation filter. And at the third level of check, when we go through the annual reports of each of these companies for the past 10 years, that is when we go through these qualitative filters, which covers all of these aspects on related party transactions and fairness of compensation to management, quality of board of directors, quality of auditors, etc.
Okay, so next question is from Mr. Sirwani. He is asking that why is it underperforming its benchmark, which is Bank Nifty? So I think I would like to answer that they don't invest in Bank Nifty. But Tej, you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I'll go to the performance slide. Yeah. So we launched on 28th July. It's been about 4 months now that we launched. And these are the returns since inception, 23% versus 34% for the Bank Nifty. And one is an optical effect because we need to report numbers on a TWRR basis. So 27% is the return for the first investor that we've generated instead of the 23%. And the second part of the answer is that because most of the stocks that we invested in, one is the lending part of the portfolio, second is the non-lending part of the portfolio. The lending part is comparable to the Bank Nifty. Bank Nifty consists only of lenders. So the lending part is generated around 37, 38% returns, which is higher than the bank nifty. The non-lending part has delivered somewhere around 6, 7, 8%, which is lower than the bank nifty. The reason behind that is because when we launched the portfolio, most of the recovery of the non-lenders had already happened. Because these non-lenders were not as impacted as the lenders were through COVID, these non-lenders had already recovered through the hammering that the financial sector saw in March, April, May when we launched the portfolio in July. So if we look at a 2.5 year period, which we saw in the back test, we can see that the 2.5 year returns that we looked at in the back test, we can see that these two lines, the green line is the lenders in our portfolio, the gray line is the non-lenders in our portfolio. We launched our portfolio somewhere over here in July. And at that point of time, the non-lenders had already recovered through this COVID crash, while the bank nifty was yet to recover. So while the bank nifty recovered post July, we've not seen that sort of 30-35% sort of performance come through, but we've seen only a 25-27% sort of performance come through.
All right. I think this question is for Saurabh. Do you think that Indian financials will follow a similar path to that of 2008 crisis, where banks like BOA or Goldman's got an opportunity to diversify their services?
Okay. Before I answer that, just a simple thing. I'm the first customer of Kings of Capital. So once Tej mentioned returns, so I'm also a human being. So I went to the Marcellus website and I logged into our portal and I checked my returns. So I handed over my monies to Tej in middle of July, and since inception, he's given me 28%, which, given that the portfolio is 60% banks and 40% non-banks, 20%. This is raw returns, folks. I'm not annualizing it. If you annualize it, it becomes much greater. So 28% in 3 months from a portfolio of this quality. Remember, we're talking here about HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, Bajaj Finance, the best life insurers, the best asset managers. So 28% returns in 4 months? 4 months, right? 4 months from July. So very happy with that. Very happy.
Saurabh, I have a disconnect here. So see, do you think it is fair to compare your banking and financials with Bank Nifty per se? Because Bank Nifty
it isn't fair. We did it because it's the natural benchmark. So you're right. I mean, at one level we shouldn't. We should create our own index, saying 60% weight Bank Nifty ko dete hain and 40% to something else. But we are happy to over a multiple year period we'll outgun Bank Nifty. I can confidently tell you we'll outgun Bank Nifty, because remember what drives compounding over a long run. What drives compounding for banks is, can you grow your book value per share, right? The Bank Nifty consists of a whole host of low quality banks. So over a 2-3 year period, we'll uncomfortably outgun. But on the practical nature of making money, the main thing to focus on for everybody on this call, don't get carried away on Konsa index. The regulator asks us to have an index. By the way, the regulator requires, it's compulsory for a PMS manager to have an index. So we said Nifty Banks is the obvious index to have. And we're confident we'll outgun it. But forget that. Your job, my job, we're not going to feed our kids by telling them, "Ye index ko outperform kiya." For me to send my kids to college, I have to just have performance. हाथ में पैसा होना चाहिए. Benchmark को beat करने से मेरा बच्चा ज़्यादा college भी नहीं जाएगा. So how will we generate healthy returns on an ongoing basis? By investing in clean financial services companies with strong capital allocation and high barriers to entry. If we do that, as this chart shows, the bottom left table, if you look at the bottom left table, even through the last 5 years, as you know, have been very difficult for the country, right? We had Demon hua, GST, COVID, then we've had DS Bank fiasco, ILFS fiasco, DHFL fiasco. Next year, I guarantee you there'll be 2 more fiascos. In spite of that, we've generated 19% earnings growth, bottom left table. And guess what share price returns have been from this portfolio over the last 5 years? If you look at the top right table, first row, आपको 19% returns दिख रहा है. So whatever earnings growth we can generate, we'll take that home as returns, and therefore we're comfortable at the 20% mark. And it's unlikely that that the bank Nifty will be able to do that. You can see that actually. If you see the bottom left table, bank Nifty ka earnings growth dekhiye, it's 7%, right? The Nifty, as I've told you, super pathetic, 1%. So bank Nifty 7% earnings growth, and if you look at the top right table, bank Nifty returns 10%. So we will outgun bank Nifty by a factor of 2. Just give it a little bit of time. But in the time, if you don't have time and you're a impatient person, then like me, you can enjoy the sorts of returns I'm enjoying. You're asking some question that 2008 के बाद क्या हुआ? BOA expand किया, somebody else expanded. Who are these people? I don't understand. BOA कौन है?
Yeah, so it says that I think post 2008 crisis, company like Goldman, etc., they got an opportunity to diversify their services. So
how do I care? Goldman India में क्या करता है? I think they have a छोटा सा office in Prabhadevi last I knew, next to the Mercedes showroom. They have a छोटा सा office. They do, I'm sure, some M&A. They probably do some asset management for their Western piece. What relevance does Goldman have to Indian financial services? Whoever asked this question can just put the further comment in. Why are you interested? Goldman Sachs क्या करेगा इंडिया में या Bank of America मेरे लिए? I'm trying to think it through. Tej, can you understand why somebody would want to know what Goldman Sachs or Bank of America would do in India?
Most of their business is around investment banking, and actually the foreign banks business was actually disrupted during the global financial crisis. So
could be, not sure. So next question is, are we not increasing a risk by investing all capital in Kings of Capital? So I think as Saurabh and Tej, both of them have clarified that it's a well-diversified portfolio. So,
but because if you don't mind, I'll just step in there. Please. Everybody on this call, right? Every single person, your bread and butter portfolio has to be CCP. If consistent compounders is not part of your portfolio, you really have to be, rethinking your approach to financial services and wealth allocation. So, because I hope you've also
there are
told
many who are already part of
so every client. So think of it like this: consistent compounders. CCP is the dal chawal. I'll use a food wala analogy. CCP is the dal chawal. It should be the foundation of your portfolio, right? Solid compounders: Nestle, Asian Paints, Pidilite, Dr. Lal Path Labs, Divi's Lab, Abbott Labs, Relaxo. It should be the foundation of your portfolio. 20% compounding, relatively steady returns, Bharat Sarkar volatility, Bharat Sarkar bond volatility. This is the main course. Tej's portfolio, Kings of Capital, is the sabji. The main course, what will give you vitamins and nutrition and dal chawal se carbohydrate aa raha hai. For your vitamins and for your nutrition, you need Kings of Capital, right? Why do you need Kings of Capital? Because you need a portfolio which can gun out 20% se thoda higher on a consistent basis. So for everybody out there, make sure you get your consistent compounded investment done. If you have doubts about it, please tell Vikas. He will set up a call with our CCP fund manager, Rakshit. For every 100 rupees that you have, around 60 to 65 rupees should go to CCP. 35 to 40 rupees should come to Kings of Capital. The Rabdi Malai, the dessert, is Little Champs, right? Because too many clients gorge themselves on Little Champs too quickly, we had to shut it to inflows. So Little Champs, we can't serve you the Rabdi Malai anymore. The dessert is Little Champs. We're no longer accepting clients in Little Champs as of July. But CCP should be the main course, dal chawal, or depending on which part of the country you are in, idli sambar. And this is the substantive thing, KCP, 2/3 of your portfolio. And if you do that effectively, you end up with around 20 stocks. 20 stocks between CCP plus KCP, you'll have 20 stocks who are clean, superbly run, very high barriers to entry, and you're investing in the best that this country can offer to you and to me, and you're putting your compounding engine in shape as you work hard for your money in the office or in your shop or your factory. We work hard to compound your wealth at 20%. These companies work hard to compound your wealth at 20%.
All right. So the question is from Mr. Deven. He is asking, on the one side, FIs are pouring money in Indian equities. On the other side, DIs are selling it. So is this the pattern of higher market fee is going to be remain hereafter, or how is it?
So DIIs, so our clients are buying every day. We are seeing flows every week of around 100 crores. And we've seen this, because Marcellus, right? We set up 2 years ago. And we've managed 5,000 crores of domestic money We've got around 4,800 crores of domestic money, couple of hundred crores of foreign money, and pretty much every week for the last year or so, we've had 100 crores. And the reason we have money coming in is straightforward, right? You have inflation at 7%. You have inflation at 7%. For every single person on this Zoom call, if you carry on doing your fixed deposits, debt mutual fund, insurance policies, real estate, etc., after tax, you'll take home 5% return. That too will be with the grace of the big man in the sky. The big man in the sky is kind. After tax on your FDs and gold and real estate and debt mutual funds, सब मिला जुला के after tax you'll take home 5%. Because ठीक बोल रहा हूँ ना?
Correct.
On your non-equity portfolio, most of your clients will be taking home 5%.
Yeah.
Inflation is 7. That means guarantee say you're losing 2% a year. You lose 2% a year over 10 years, and 2% is a conservative estimate. You're probably going to lose more than that. If you lose 2% a year over 10 years, you've lost a third of your wealth. Right? Now, if I can figure that out in sort of 60 seconds, thoughtful clients like yours would have figured that out. And what you're seeing, therefore, over the last 12 months is a complete rush on the part of thoughtful, wealthy people to say this is not tolerable, boss. 7%, 8% ka inflation chala. And this is not going to reduce, by the way. This inflation is not going to come down. As vaccine comes and economy picks up, inflation और भागेगा. If you're not invested in high quality equities, you're guaranteed to be destroying your wealth. I mean, you don't need me to say that. With inflation at 7-8%, your wealth is dying as we speak, unless 70-80% of your portfolio is in high quality equities, right? And this dynamic has become clear to people, which is why firms like ours, and we're not the only one. I've heard, and I'm sure you'll know, other PMSs, other good PMSs that you'll be representing are also seeing heavy inflows. And this will be the story of the country for the next 10 years. This is the KCP story, right? I said, no, 95% is physical, only 5% is financial. 5% का अगर 6% हुआ 1 year में, 7% हुआ 2 years, 1% of 10 trillion, $100 billion is going to slam into the financial system every year. Even if 1/5 of that only, even if 1/5 of that is equities, $20 billion from domestic investors will hit the stock market on a systematic basis, right? And that's got nothing to do with kiska PE multiple kya hai, economic growth kya hai. It's just survival on the part of the Indian HNW, who realizes I've bought too many flats in Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, Chennai. I've got too much gold and too much of this FD and insurance stuff. I need to be invested in CCP, KCP. And that dynamic is very powerful. In parallel, the Western CIO kya bol raha hai? Western CIO, and this is India's story for the last 50 years. You have a recession in America, right? You'll see this is like a pre-recorded. In year 1, you'll get recession in America. Within 6 months, the RBI would have cut the policy rate in India by 2.5%. 10-year bond yield down 2.5%, RBI policy rates down 2.5%. Recession in America, second sequence of events. Oil price corrects by 50 to 80%. The world's largest consumer of oil is America. Wahan pe recession, oil price down 50 to 80%. Within 6 months of recession in America, sasta tel and sasta paisa upon India. Within a year, economy booms. The only time Indian economy booms is when there's a recession in America. When there's a recession in America with 100% certainty, we have a boom in our country for 2 to 3 years. Uske baad, we choke the boom out because of supply side issues. So we are following that sequence again, right? We followed it in 1982-83. We followed it in 92-93. We followed it in 2003-04. We followed it in 2009-10. And this is the 5th time in 40 years we're going through the same sequence of events. I think Tej might have a chart. So what Tej is showing you on this chart, the red chevrons are showing you. Tej, the chart went away. So the red chevrons are showing you the recessions in America, right? So the first boom in independent India, believe it or not, came in 1982. The recession in America was 79 to 81. The brown line or the orange line is the oil price sinking, and 10-year bond yield sinking is the blue line. फिर 91-92 में फिर से वहाँ पे गल्फ वॉर हुआ, ऑयल प्राइस आप देखिए ऑयल प्राइस पंच मार रहा है, ब्राउन लाइन, 10-year बॉन्ड यील्ड गिर रहा है, इंडिया का बूम 93 में चालू हुआ. 2000 में .com bust, 2001 9/11, oil price brown line, you can see it halving, blue line is the 10-year bond yield getting zapped, right? And then Lehman Brothers, 2008, oil price, the brown line goes down 80%, remarkable fall. 10-year bond yield falls, as everybody knows. Fed makes the cost of money zero during Lehman. This year, January, February, March, April, Fed made the cost of money policy rate zero. Oil price fell by 50-60%. And what are you seeing in India today? Economic recovery. Why? Sasta paisa. The lowest home loan rates ever in Indian history, the lowest motorbike finance rates ever in Indian history, the lowest cost of money ever for Bajaj Finance or NTPC or Reliance. You're going to see the recovery next year come through. So if you want to play the dynamic, you better come into the stock market. Up to you how you play the market. Our submission to you is play the recovery through the best quality financial services companies, the kings of capital, and more generally, your foundation of your portfolio, play the recovery through the consistent compounders. Don't get greedy. Don't go and do something stupid in some India opportunities, yeah, kuch small cap mutual fund, yeah, India alpha shalfa mein. Do sensible, solid, conservative investing in great companies. You can do this yourself. Our host held up the book that you need. You can buy the book. You can download the pirated copy of the book. You can do this yourself. If you want to give us your money, we'll be happy to look after it for you. But don't, carry on doing this, nonsense of 5% returns in a country with 7-8% inflation. As you can figure out, you're going to destroy your wealth with guarantee.
Yeah, I think there are no more questions. So one question from my side before we conclude. So you worked in the international market also, specifically US. So if you look at worldwide, the banking and financial sector, our weight is about 35%. But globally, if you could throw some more lights, how has been the weight?
So for developing countries, this weight is higher. So remember, what role does the banking and financial services sector play? These stocks that Tej is investing, what role do they play? They are basically fulfilling the same role for the economy, what the heart does for the human body. The heart's job is to pump blood into the body. The banking system's job is to pump money into the economy, right? So whether they take money from Vikas Agarwal or Saurabh Mukherjee, or they take money from some Western pension fund or endowment, the banking system is an intermediation system. It's taking money and it's pumping it around the country. In emerging markets like ours, like China, where growth typically is 6-7-8%, that job of pumping money into the economy is a heavy-duty job, because the economy is itna bhag raha hai that the heart of the economy has to function over time. So in emerging markets like China, India, the size of the financial services economy tends to be around a third of the economy. We are at 25-30%. China is 35%, right? They've grown even faster than us. So unka financial services sector is even bigger. Once a country matures, like UK or Sweden or France or USA, the size of the financial services economy is more like 20%. So we will also get there. We are at $2,000. Western world is at $20,000. They're 10 times richer than us. We are at $2,000 per capita income. Western world is at $20,000 per capita income. They're 10 times richer. Because they're 10 times richer, the size of the financial services economy as a percentage of GDP is roughly half of what it is in our country. And that makes sense. That makes sense. That is the whole reason why in a developing country, investing in well-run insurers, lenders is a good idea.
All right. So no more questions from our end.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting us. Thank you for your patient moderation. Thanks to everybody for listening and attending this.
Thank you, Tej, for taking the time out from your busy schedule and attending this webinar, answering all the questions so patiently. So thank you so much. And by the way, since you mentioned Saurabh, I'm happy to say that I was the first one to put up your roadshows when you launched Marcellus Funds.
Awesome.
In Pune, if you remember.
I remember very well. I remember what you were wearing that evening. I also remember. I'll tell you this. So it's one of my epic stories, right? Yeah. We all need to be brought back to earth. So you hosted me that evening in Pune. Yeah. I think you guys provided dinner as well. Dinner and drinks with her.
Kind of, yeah.
Dinner and drinks with her, right?
We had great fun, and most of these investors eventually ended up investing in.
So I had held just like you held the book up, I had held the book up as well. Then after dinner, one gentleman comes to me with in his hand, and he shows me the book, and he says, "How come you know so much about this book?" So that's when I thought.
2-3 facts by then.
I thought that's what अभी इनोवा में चढ़ के घर जाते हैं, बहुत ज्यादा हो गया पुणे में. But thank you for being a steadfast supporter of Marcellus.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. Thank you, Tej, once again. Give my
Thank
regards to
you.
Pramod as well. Yeah, thank you. So, good evening, everyone. My